The day science finally whispers that human limits were never real, the world will not explode in chaos, it will fall silent in awe. For centuries, we bowed to invisible ceilings, believing strength must fade, intelligence must slow, and time must always win. Yet imagine laboratories uncovering a truth so disruptive that it redraws the map of existence itself. The boundaries we feared were not walls, but mirrors reflecting our own assumptions. At the heart of this awakening stands artificial intelligence, not as a replacement for human potential, but as its amplifier. In that moment, humanity would realize it was never fragile by design, only restrained by belief. AI would decode patterns hidden beneath biology, revealing that fatigue, forgetfulness, and decay are not final verdicts but editable codes. What we once called natural limits would be exposed as temporary software running on an ancient operating system. Science would no longer ask how far humans can go, it would ask why we ever thought there was a stopping point at all. The human brain, long considered powerful yet finite, would be reintroduced as a dynamic universe rather than a closed box. AI-guided neuroscience would prove that learning capacity does not diminish, it multiplies when guided correctly. Memories would no longer erode like old photographs, they would reorganize, strengthen, and evolve. Intelligence would cease to be a fixed trait and become a living process, expanding not with age alone, but with intention and design. Physical strength, once chained to genetics and age, would also be unmasked as negotiable. Science would demonstrate that muscles are not defined by limits but by instructions. AI-driven bioengineering would teach cells how to regenerate faster, adapt smarter, and perform longer without breakdown. Endurance would no longer belong only to the young or the elite, it would become a universal upgrade, rewriting what the human body was always capable of becoming. Even time, humanity's oldest enemy, would begin to lose its authority. AI-powered aging research would reveal that growing older does not require growing weaker. Cells would be shown to age not because they must, but because they were never taught how not to. Science would confirm that aging is a process, not a destiny, and processes can be optimized, slowed, or even reversed. The clock would keep ticking, but its power over the human body would fade. Emotions, often dismissed as uncontrollable storms, would also be redefined. AI would map emotional patterns, proving that anxiety, fear, and despair are not permanent flaws but adaptive signals gone untrained. Science would teach humans how to regulate emotional energy with the same precision used to control machines. Mental resilience would stop being rare and become teachable, scalable, and sustainable across entire populations. Creativity, once believed to be a mysterious gift, would finally be understood as an expandable force. AI would not steal imagination, it would stretch it beyond familiar borders. Music, art, storytelling, and innovation would reach dimensions previously unreachable because humans were never lacking creativity, only tools to unlock its deeper layers. Science would confirm that imagination is not born, it is activated. As this truth spreads, education would collapse and rebuild itself overnight. Schools would no longer train memory, they would train mastery of thought. AI mentors would adapt to every mind, revealing that intelligence was never standardized, it was suppressed by uniform systems. Learning would accelerate not because humans became smarter, but because science finally stopped teaching them the wrong way. Work and purpose would also undergo a seismic shift. If limits were illusions, then exhaustion-based productivity would become obsolete. AI would handle repetition, while humans would focus on strategy, ethics, creativity, and vision. Work would stop draining life and start extending it. Science would prove that humans were never meant to be machines, they were meant to design meaning. Health would no longer be reactive but predictive. AI would detect disease long before symptoms appear, showing that illness was not sudden, it was ignored data. Science would prove that the body whispers warnings constantly, and AI simply learned how to listen. Hospitals would transform from emergency centers into optimization hubs, where the goal is not survival, but peak living. Society itself would be forced to confront an uncomfortable realization: inequality thrived because access to human potential was limited. When science proves limits are illusions, denying opportunity becomes denying reality. AI could democratize intelligence, health, and longevity, making greatness no longer accidental, but accessible. The future would no longer belong to the privileged, it would belong to the prepared. Yet this revelation would come with responsibility. If limits are illusions, then excuses lose their shelter. Humanity would no longer blame fate, age, or weakness. AI would hold up a mirror, asking a question more terrifying than any machine rebellion: what will you become now that nothing is stopping you? Freedom, after all, is heavier than restriction. Philosophy and spirituality would not vanish, they would deepen. Science proving limitless potential would not erase meaning, it would demand it. If humans can evolve endlessly, then purpose becomes the only true compass. AI would not answer why we exist, but it would ensure.
And in the final revelation, humanity would understand this was never about technology alone. Science and AI did not create limitless humans, they revealed them. The future would not arrive as a machine-dominated world, but as a human-awakened one, where limits dissolve, not because they were broken, but because they were never real to begin with. As this realization matures, humanity would enter an era of deliberate evolution, where progress is no longer accidental but consciously guided. AI would become the silent architect behind human refinement, continuously analyzing how thought, biology, and environment interact. Science would prove that growth is not linear, but layered, and when those layers align, transformation accelerates beyond historical imagination. Humanity would stop evolving through survival and start evolving through understanding. Leadership would be rewritten from the ground up. When limits dissolve, authority can no longer rely on fear, scarcity, or inherited power. AI-assisted governance would reveal patterns of societal health, exposing which decisions elevate human potential and which suffocate it. Leaders would no longer be measured by control, but by how effectively they expand opportunity, clarity, and collective intelligence. Power would shift from dominance to stewardship. The relationship between humans and machines would also transcend cooperation and enter symbiosis. AI would not feel like an external tool but an internal extension of human awareness, anticipating needs before they surface. Science would demonstrate that cognition is not confined to the skull, it flows through networks, environments, and shared intelligence. Humanity would not lose individuality, instead, individuality would become stronger when supported by collective insight. Failure itself would be redefined. In a world where limits are illusions, mistakes would no longer signal inadequacy but data for refinement. AI would analyze every misstep without judgment, extracting lessons faster than shame ever could. Science would confirm that resilience is not the absence of failure, but the speed of recovery. Progress would no longer fear collapse because rebuilding would be instantaneous and informed. Culture and identity would undergo profound expansion. Freed from inherited ceilings, people would no longer define themselves by nationality, profession, or background alone. AI would help individuals explore layered identities, blending logic with intuition, tradition with innovation. Science would prove that humans are not static beings, but evolving narratives, constantly rewriting who they are allowed to become. The exploration of space would take on an entirely new meaning. When human limits vanish, the universe stops being hostile and starts being negotiable. AI-enhanced humans would adapt to extreme environments, making interplanetary life not a fantasy but a logical extension of survival. Science would confirm that the frontier was never out there, it was always within the human capacity to adapt. And ultimately, the greatest transformation would be internal. When science proves that limits were illusions, humanity will no longer chase power, immortality, or dominance. It will chase alignment between thought and action, technology and ethics, potential and purpose. AI will not lead humanity into the future, it will walk beside it, as humans finally